when we talk about everything that we've learned through school and sports, all that we've talked about so far were the challenges.
Right.
And I think that's where you learn the most, right? Is through the difficulties and the challenges. And if we remove those, then there's not much that's learned.
Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. I am always excited to get to hang out with you and spend some time. I do want to remind you the book came out in June and it's available on, well, anywhere you buy books. What I would love for you to do is not only to purchase it, but to read it, because I do believe that it could have a really positive impact, encourage you to run after your dream, and leave us a review, because all of that matters when it comes to the algorithm, just like likes and shares and comments and all those things. Today, well, I have my good friend and my middle son, Carson Luke. Welcome to the program.
Friend. I don't think you've ever called me your friend before.
Well, you are my friend.
Okay.
And my son.
I'm adjusting. This is a new relationship that I didn't realize.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. We're glad you're here. I was thinking, we just got back from Halloween Horror Nights.
Yes.
So
you always got to be careful when you're pronouncing.
Yes, I know that. Yes. I've heard pastors screw that up before. So what'd you think?
It was great. We go almost every year for quite a while now. And this year was, I would say, one of the best as far as the houses go.
Yeah. Which house did you like the best?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Probably the Insidious house.
Insidious.
What'd
you like best about it?
It was long.
It was long.
And they do this thing where you're in a room with a bunch of mannequins, but they're dressed up, so you can't tell if they're people or not.
Yeah.
And some of them are people. And the moment you walk in, you're like, I know some of these are real. But it's, lights are flashing. You can't tell which ones.
And they had like 3 of those rooms.
They did. And it's terrifying.
And for people to realize, if you've not ever been, it's not like devil kind of feeling. It's really jump scares.
Yeah, that's
really
they
have my mask or whatever, but at the end of the day, they're just different jump scares.
Yep.
And in that one, it was one after another, after everywhere you turn.
Well, and that for me is what is scary. Like the dark and stuff, it doesn't scare me. It's I'm not necessarily into it, but it doesn't scare me. Right. It's just when people jump out, and I'm not. Sometimes even when I know it's coming, there'd be times where I'd see them. I'm like, I know they're gonna jump on, and then they jump, and it's loud, and I jump.
To me, the jump scares and the ones with the biggest mask are always the most scary as far as.
Oh yeah.
But it's you laugh, and the people in front of you, some people are more jumpy than others.
Absolutely, I would say more than fear that night is just pure fun, laughter. You see the person in front of you go, you hear them scream and they lost it. Because that's the thing, when you're in there, you're not getting every scare because it's a constant line. Whereas like a normal haunted house, you go in with a group of 5 or 10 and that's your group that you go through. So you're getting hit by everyone. Whereas this is just a constant line of people. And so you're not going to get every scare. So sometimes they'll scare the person in front of you or behind you and you'll see it. And, seeing someone get scared it never gets old.
No, it's fun. So if you've never been, I encourage you. I don't know about other, houses or any of that kind of stuff, but it's always a good time to just kind of hang out. And Halloween has become quite the holiday.
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite holidays. I like the Halloween movies, and the creepiness is always fun.
There's part of the church world is, not too big on Halloween.
Yeah.
For good reason, in some sense, as far as
it can go to a dark place.
Scripture speaks against witches and, sorcery and all those kind of things. But for the most part, it's about, I think, the people who really enjoy Halloween. It's not so much about the witches and the, spells and all that. It's more about just being scared and
and you see those
adrenaline.
Individuals, when you're someone who enjoys Halloween, you go to the haunted houses and stuff. You see those individuals who it's more than a holiday to them. You know what I mean? Yeah, that is not myself, but it is. I enjoy the scary movies and all the decor and stuff that goes on with Halloween.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite scary movie?
Probably that's a tough one. Scream is really good. Scream is really, really
That's the
good.
one with the mask, right?
Yeah. I always, because he was the director. Wes Craven was a psychology professor, and so he does a lot of cool playing on scary movies while still being a scary movie. So have you ever seen one of those movies that you're like, oh, that was good, and then you read up on it, like all the stuff that I'm not smart enough to understand, and then I really started to like it after that. So Scream would probably be up there as one of my favorites.
It's like the first Halloween is like a lot of one camera shots or whatever, where they stay with it and everything.
Yeah, which when you go back and watch that first one, it's a different kind of creepy.
Yeah.
It is a different kind of, I almost more enjoy sometimes going back to those original ones, because without the money to do all these crazy special effects, as I've said, like the wild kill or whatever, it doesn't scare me. But these, the older ones didn't have the budget to do all that. And so you're just watching these, just like you said, one long creepy shot. Everything's more drawn out.
And some of them, some of the new ones do get into all the spiritualism and spiritism and devil and all that, and can get quite scary.
Absolutely.
Especially because there's a reality to some of that stuff, and it can get
dark.
Yeah, dark. That's a good way to say it. Anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're not here to talk about Halloween. You may be listening to this, and it's Christmas time.
Could be.
And
or Easter.
Easter, that's right. Or Flag Day.
Flag Day. See you at the pole.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
No. See you at the pole. I'm not sure when that happens, but it's, people gather to pray at the pool, pray at the pool during school, that kind of thing. But anyways, we are glad you guys are here. And I thought we'd spend a few minutes talking, because our goal is to partner with people so that they can reach their God potential. They can succeed at what God's called them to do. They can be everything that their heart is passionate about. So I thought we'd talk about what we have learned about when we, as we've grown up. You know what I'm saying? And I want to encourage folks along the way, if they haven't already, subscribe, because we're going for 50,000 subscribers. We haven't got there yet. And we were going for 100 reviews on the book and 50,000 subscribers. We got the reviews.
We did.
We still need more, but we got the reviews. But now we need 50,000 subscribers, because we're trying to build a community, and we want to hear your story. And we want to connect, because I think there's some really cool things we can do ahead. We do a live stream on Sunday nights at 7:00, and we'd love for you to be a part of that. But I wanted us to talk about what we've learned and how you bring that forward. I like to watch people and to reflect sometimes. So I thought we'd start with school. All right. So when you think about school, which is one of your favorite subjects, lots, for those of you listening today or watching, Carson was not the most studious student.
No, I was not.
But think about what you learned, and I'll start. But as I was thinking about this question and thinking about what did I learn in school, one of the things that I learned is often school is not designed to help people become effective thinkers. It's more in the sense of learn this, memorize it, and then be able to regurgitate it, as opposed to really thinking through life, thinking through problems. And I've always enjoyed that. So, in algebra class, I'd always think the professor or the teacher would say, this is the way you do it. And I'd think, is there another way in which I can get that answer? And I remember I had one teacher who just told me science or biology, and she just told me I just literally made her sick, because I was always asking questions. I was always asking, what if, but what about? Because I've always been really, really curious. And I don't think our educational system is built to encourage curiosity. And sadly, I think curiosity is really important to be an effective leader.
Yeah.
Asking questions about why this happens, or what if we did it this way, or,
Right.
I think we're all creative. I think it's part of being, especially being a Christ follower, but in different areas. Creativity doesn't mean you can draw or paint, or you're on the worship team. You can be creative in technology. You can be creative in finances. You can be creative in a lot of ways. But I think our education system, and especially in those areas, the technology and mathematics and those kind of things, it doesn't necessarily encourage curiosity so as to be creative.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I definitely felt that in school. Like in history, I was more concerned about why people did certain things than what they did. And history was probably my favorite subject, but you get into, this is what happened, this is how it happened. But for me, the follow-up would always be, well, why did that happen? Mm-hmm. What were they thinking? What was the mindset? What was, and you'll have teachers who are great and they want to dive into those discussions. And you'll have, several who are not trying to dive into that. For me, the biggest thing I probably learned with school was more so after the fact, not necessarily during, but sometimes there's things in life that you don't want to do, you don't see the point in, you don't understand the reason for, but it's doing something in you regardless. And I think had I have given school a fair shot, I would have learned from a much younger age the idea of discipline in areas that I don't see the need for. It's not easy by any means, but it's a lot easier to be disciplined in the areas that you want to improve, you see the importance of. But sometimes there's just areas that you just have to listen to the wisdom of others who are saying, hey, this is something. Again, I'm talking more as a young person.
Right.
You get older, you decide if schooling is the path that you need to take because of technology and whatnot. There's a lot of other opportunities. But when you're younger, you're being told, hey, you need to do this. And I just was not willing to put in the work for something I didn't see the reason for. And so it took me, I had to learn when I was an adult, which made it much more difficult and much more consequential to learn the idea of discipline in areas that I don't see value in. Because you're not always going to see the value in everything.
Right.
And that would have been super helpful to have learned at a much earlier age.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, the educational system, even for teachers, I think it's difficult for them sometimes to remind us of what's important and why it's important. Like you were saying, the question, not just what happened, but why it happened.
Right.
Because so many standardized testing and they have to teach to the test and, all those things, which again, and I'm not ripping, my degree's in education, your mom's degree's in education, your grandfather is a superintendent.
And in a lot of ways, you are an educator.
Yes.
But you're not held to that.
Right. No, a higher standard.
Exactly.
I stand before God. The Bible actually says, as a pastor, you have to stand, a teacher, you have to stand before God about what you have taught. And that's not people forget that. Right. But that's always kind of on your mind. All right. So those are, I think, and again, I encourage those who are listening today to think back. What are some of the things that you learned in school, maybe as a young man or young woman, that you've implemented or that maybe you need to implement, that could help you be a more effective leader? They say, again, I've been listening to Erwin McManus a lot lately, because I can kind of relate to him. And he wrote a book about the genius of Jesus. And I think it was in that book that he talked about how when you test children, they test as geniuses. And then as the child gets old, fewer and fewer of them test as geniuses. And that a lot of it is just about that idea of curiosity. Mm-hmm. And in the sense that the older we get, the more we're told we're not geniuses. Little kids often think they can do anything, and they're always asking questions, why and what, and they're hungry to learn, and, they can pick up things. They can learn multiple languages. They can, learn all kinds of things, and it seems so easily. But as we get older, we tend to kind of forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. It becomes more difficult. I think it's important what you were talking about, encouraging everyone to look back on that time. I think that it really is a discipline to reflect. on what we've experienced, what we've done, decisions we've made. And I think if we don't reflect, we can assume that a certain time was just kind of pointless. There was no point in going through it, which will affect our future decisions. We'll really avoid something that we don't see a point in. Whereas, I think when we take the time to reflect, we can see what was happening in that season, believing that there's really no waste, that there was something that we learned through that or grew through. And then it allows us to make more informed decisions as we go forward, rather than just, well, that was a pointless time. There was really no benefit. And so we just avoid it moving forward.
Speaking of that, let's move forward.
Yes.
And what about in athletics? You played a lot of different sports growing up.
Yeah.
And again, I'm thinking about when we were younger. So what's something you learned in athletics that maybe you implement or don't implement as an adult leader today?
To be honest, that's way more. That's a ton of lessons. I would say the biggest one for me is learned how to deal with being offended. There's when I played sports, talking smack was still okay. It was still accepted. And I remember, I don't even know if you remember this, but me and Tyler, we used to play football one-on-one, and you would be the QB. And we just play one-on-one. And I remember one time I was talking nonsense, and he shoved me down. And I remember you didn't come to my defense. You had told me, if you're going to talk, this is what's going to kind of happen. Now, I think you might have talked to Tyler after that, but I remember that stuck with me of this. There's going to be things that are said to me. There's going to be things that are done that I have to be able to internalize, but hold on to, or not hold on to in a negative light, but not unleash this insecurity out on people, right? Sometimes you're going to miss the shot, and it's not that you're just going to miss. That's hard to deal with internally. But sometimes people are going to talk about how you missed, and that can easily lead to you blowing up this situation, especially if you're the leader, right? Like if you're the employee, well, then you may get upset, but you're going to keep it more inward because there's not really an outlet, to blow up on your boss. If you are, there's probably bigger issues at play. But if you're the boss, it becomes very easy to validate all that or to justify it. You know what I mean? The moment your team is like, man, I don't know what he was thinking. And I'm not saying there doesn't need to be conversations at play, but it's really easy. You're feeling insecure. You messed up. You missed it. And then people are talking about how you did. That becomes challenging and difficult. And while maybe certain things shouldn't be said, at the end of the day, they're going to be. They're always going to be. And I think that what sports has really taught me is how to function, how to not get sensitive or insecure to people's criticism, even if it's in a negative light. It's not always going to be positive. And ideally it is, but it's not always going to be. And it's still my responsibility to be able to function through that. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing, is just learning how to not be hypersensitive.
And it's funny, a lot of the times the things that we say can only be learned through athletics. Really, it's more about just a team. You know what I mean? Like if you were in the debate team or you were some art or drama team, you'd have to figure out a lot of these same things. Yeah. Because I think most of the time, what sports tends to teach us is in the when you hear people talk about it, I learned how to be part of the team, and I learned how to work through pain, and I, learned what you were just sharing as far as insecurity goes, and those are all true lessons. But I think sometimes we shortchange the other, because you don't hear people talk about that on the drama team. I was a part of the drama team, and one of the things I learned is, or I was a part of the band, and I just encourage, again, the folks that are listening today, that anything that you've been a part of when it comes to a group, if you think back, there are probably some lessons that you learned or about, and you can either implement them as a leader today, or you saw happen and don't need to implement them.
I would anticipate that this next generation is going to have very different, like what they learned from playing sports growing up. And probably across the board, I would assume all these areas are going in that direction. very different than when I played, as far as the time commitment, the energy commitment. It'd be interesting to hear someone, younger, talk about the what they learned through playing sports, just because it probably consumed so much more of their life than it did for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even if they're just basic players.
Exactly.
I don't even know if today, Lion, my grandson,
My nephew.
your nephew, is 5. He's playing baseball. But I don't even, when I played, it was like, I'm better, swing, And people out in the field would actually try to, the catcher would say, oh, that was a good one. You should have swung, I don't know if they do any of that today.
I don't know. I remember getting up to bat. I was probably in 5th grade, and I was playing a team where I was playing against a friend who went to the same school as me. And when I got up to bat, he said, he was like, move in. Like basically saying, I can't hit it.
Right.
But it wasn't like even being mean. It was just like, how you talk to each other and how you kind of riled each other up, kind of part of the game in that way. But I would say being a part of youth ministry, that doesn't happen as much, because I've gotten myself into trouble because I assume that the sports kids still talk that way. And some do, but a lot don't. Because they don't receive it super well. Right. So I would assume it's not happening as often.
Not
at the casual level. Maybe at the higher level it still is, but at the casual level I don't think it's happening as often.
Yeah, which is, again, you don't want anybody to be bullied.
Sure.
But there's a lot to learn about life and the reality of competition and what that entails, and that all of those distractions. That's why I always used to make fun of golf or tennis, where everybody has to be quiet while you play it.
Yeah.
As someone who played basketball or baseball and even football, all these soccer, all these sports are loud and people are waving, stuff in front of you while you're trying to shoot free throws and all that. Then you get to golf.
Yeah. Well, and you see, I don't know if you've watched any of the Hard Knocks and stuff on HBO with the NFL football, but you really realize how communication works on the field or on the court. I remember watching a documentary with Kobe Bryant where he was mic'd up during a game. I never realized how much communication happens during a basketball game amongst the players. Right. I don't know what I thought, if they just all know what they're doing, but he's talking nonstop, not just trash, but communicating with each other. And I just think that amongst that, though, there is some, even amongst teammates, there's some, there can be animosity, there can be friction, and all of this teaches you how to communicate. And, one of my fears is that if the confrontation goes away, really, that's such a huge part to communication. I just wonder where that leaves us, you know what I mean, as a people, when it comes to our ability to communicate, which ultimately leads to our ability to have relationships. I am taking this another direction, but I just think that it's interesting when we talk about everything that we've learned through school and sports, all that we've talked about so far were the challenges.
Right. And
I think that's where you learn the most, right? Is through the difficulties and the challenges. And if we remove those, then there's not much that's learned,
No,
so
that's good. I think, I was just thinking about that whole idea of the competition and like you were saying, the challenges and the difficulties. But I encourage those who are listening today to think back through, their school days and their, because if you reflect and you're kind of curious, it really can help you to become a more effective leader today. Because it's, we'd love to think we change a lot as we get older, and hopefully we do mature, but as a leader, there's still a lot of child in ourselves and in the people that we're leading. And, in any kind of competitive challenge, whether it be the band, any of these things help you find out about yourself. And that's so helpful as a leader in ministry and business and family.
Yeah.
So last thought, when it comes to what did you learn as a kid in a family that you can apply as a leader today?
I would say that's an interesting question. I learned a lot, but I would say probably one of the biggest things that I take with me today is sometimes you can't take care of everyone's best interest individually. Sometimes it's just got to be the global best interest. But that can be difficult because it does mean that some people aren't going to get their perfect situation. But trusting that the global best interest will get everyone where they need to be. But, I think that the hardest thing is, and it's funny, I just had this conversation with someone where I feel like I'm in a season, really the first time that I can remember in my life where I'm having to decipher between a lot of things that are good things, but I can't do them all. And I've never been in that season before, and it's really difficult because it's challenging because it's not, previously decisions were just, oh, that's a waste of time. That's beneficial. So let's just do that. Well, that was the goal anyways. But now it's, these are two beneficial things. But I can't do both. I've got to figure out which one I need to do. And I think that's something that just, I remember happening a lot where it's like, okay, there might be an individual best interest. This would be best for me, but it's not best for the family or the organization or the company. And so we've got to die to that in order for the overall best interest to pan out, trusting that we'll find our place in that. You know what I mean? Because we all have our own best interests. And I think it's really easy to get focused in on that and focused in on what I need to do and what I need to get done, what I want to see happen. And we lose sight of what, the overall big picture. And I think that's really where you see the impact, whether you're a Christ follower or not. I think everyone desires to have an impact, and even if that's just within your family. And I think the only way to have that impact is by not being focused on the individual best case scenario, but the overall. And that seems to always cost a little bit of the individual best case.
Right. No, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I was thinking when it comes to family, I was just reminded that there are seasons.
Yeah.
And we tend sometimes to think that what life is, it will always be. And therefore we can get discouraged or we can even overthink everything's going to be good. But there are seasons when I was growing up, where maybe mom was dependent upon me. There were seasons when school was going well. As a parent, there were seasons, when Steph, you guys were young, and then they, it changed everything as you got older and then as you left home. So I think it's important to remind ourselves as a leader that the way things are today are not necessarily the way things are always going to be. And it's important to be able to be flexible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good homes have a flexibility to them, and they don't fall apart with every, every bad grade or, late missed ball game or whatever it might be. There's just a sense of flexibility that as a parent you have to have, but also you have to teach that to your kids. Or they can get really frustrated as well.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this journey down memory lane. I hope it spurred you on a little bit to think about what life was like when you were much, much younger, and maybe some opportunities to learn that you've forgotten about, because life, as they say, is a classroom if we're paying attention. I do want to encourage you once again to subscribe and to share. And don't forget, I almost forgot, we have a book that's out.
Yes.
And would love for you to be a part of that. Remember, we have a live stream, and that is every Sunday night. We have a lot of fun, and we're the most generous show on the internet.
That's the truth.
You say, I don't believe it. Well, maybe Mr. Beast has to beat, but not in consistency.
No.
He may give away more money, but what we give away is even better because it's sentimental, and it's every single show, Sunday nights at 7 o'clock. Also, check out Soul Session. Soul Session You can catch that right here on the page. And leadership lessons are coming up. Some new content.
Oh, exciting.
Just for you. And for those of you who are listening. Hey guys, I hope you have an incredible day. Always awesome to hang out with you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Carson, Luke, and we'll see you next time right here on the Troy Gramling podcast. God bless and have a good day.